We are in Report from Iron Mountain, Section 7, Part 3. General conclusions. It is apparent from the foregoing that no program or combination of programs yet proposed for a transition to peace has remotely approached meeting the comprehensive functional requirements of a world without war. Although one projected system for fulfilling the economic function of war seems promising, similar optimism cannot be expressed in the equally essential political and sociological areas. The other major non-military functions of war, ecological, cultural, scientific, raise very different problems, but it is at least possible that detailed programming of substitutes in these areas is not prerequisite to transition. More important, it is not enough to develop adequate but separate surrogates for the major war functions. They must be fully compatible and in no degree self-canceling. Until such a unified program is developed, at least hypothetically, it is impossible for this or any other group to furnish meaningful answers to the questions originally presented to us. When asked how best to prepare for the advent of peace, we must first reply as strongly as we can that the war system cannot responsibly be allowed to disappear until 1. We know exactly what it is we plan to put in its place, and 2. We are certain beyond reasonable doubt that these substitute institutions will serve their purposes in terms of the survival and stability of society. It will then be time enough to develop methods for effectuating the transition. Procedural programming must follow, not precede, substantive solutions. Such solutions, if indeed they exist, will not be arrived at without a revolutionary revision of the modes of thought heretofore considered appropriate to peace research. That we have examined the fundamental questions involved from a dispassionate, value-free point of view should not imply that we do not appreciate the intellectual and emotional difficulties that must be overcome on all decision-making levels before these questions are generally acknowledged by others for what they are. They reflect on an intellectual level traditional emotional resistance to new, more lethal and thus more shocking forms of weaponry. The understated comment of then Senator Hubert Humphrey on the publication of On Thermonuclear War is still very much to the point. New thoughts, particularly those which appear to contradict current assumptions, are always painful for the mind to contemplate. Nor simply because we have not discussed them do we minimize the massive reconciliation of conflicting interests which domestic as well as international agreement on proceeding toward genuine peace presupposes. This factor was excluded from the purview of our assignment, but we would be remiss if we failed to take it into account. Although no insuperable obstacle lies in the path of reaching such general agreements, formidable short-term private group and general class interest in maintaining the war system is well established and widely recognized. The resistance to peace stemming from such interests is only tangential in the long run to the basic functions of war, but it will not be easily overcome in this country or elsewhere. Some observers, in fact, believe that it cannot be overcome at all in our time, that the price of peace is simply too high. This bears on our overall conclusions to the extent that timing in the transference to substitute institutions may often be the critical factor in their political feasibility. It is uncertain at this time whether peace will ever be possible. It is far more questionable by the objective standard of continued social survival than that of emotional pacifism. That it would be desirable even if it were demonstrably attainable. The war system, for all its subjective repugnance to important sections of public opinion, has demonstrated its effectiveness since the beginning of recorded history. It has provided the basis for the development of many impressively durable civilizations, including that which is dominant today. It has consistently provided unambiguous social priorities. It is, on the whole, a known quantity. A viable system of peace, assuming that the great and complex questions of substitute institutions raised in this report are both soluble and solved, would still constitute a venture into the unknown with the inevitable risks attendant on the unforeseen, however small and however well hedged. Government decision makers tend to choose peace over war whenever a real option exists, because it usually appears to be the safer choice. Under most immediate circumstances, they are likely to be right, but in terms of long-range social stability, the opposite is true. At our present state of knowledge and reasonable inference, it is the war system that must be identified with stability. The peace system with social speculation, however justifiable the speculation may appear in terms of subjective moral or emotional values. A nuclear physicist once remarked in respect to a possible disarmament agreement, "If we could change the world into a world in which no weapons could be made, that would be stabilizing. But agreements we can expect with the Soviets would be destabilizing." The qualification and the bias are equally irrelevant. Any condition of genuine total peace, however achieved, would be destabilizing until proved otherwise. If it were necessary at this moment to opt irrevocably for the retention of, for the dissolution of the war system, common prudence would dictate the former course. But it is not yet necessary, late as the hour appears, and more factors must eventually enter the war-peace equation than even the most determined search for alternative institutions for the functions of war can be expected to reveal. One group of such factors has been given only passing mention in this report. It centers around the possible obsolescence of the war system itself. We have noted, for instance, the limitations of the war system in filling its ecological function and the declining importance of this aspect of war. It by no means stretches the imagination to visualize comparable developments which may compromise the efficacy of war as, for example, an economic controller or as an organizer of social allegiance. This kind of possibility, however remote, serves as a reminder that all calculations of contingency not only involve the weighing of one group of risks against another, but require a respectful allowance for error on both sides of the scale. A more expedient reason for pursuing the investigation of alternate ways and means to serve the current functions of war is narrowly political. It is possible that one or more major sovereign nations may arrive through ambiguous leadership at a position in which a ruling administrative class may lose control of basic public opinion or of its ability to rationalize a desired war. It is not hard to imagine, in such circumstances, a situation in which governments may feel forced to initiate serious full-scale disarmament proceedings, perhaps provoked by accidental nuclear explosions, and that such negotiations may lead to the actual disestablishment of military institutions. And I'll stop part 3 right there of section, what are we in? Section 7. I'm losing track of where I am. We are in section 7, summary and conclusions, and we'll pick up in the next video. And hang in there, we are really close to finishing up this book.